And I'm Renee, and I'm so inspired by this group of seeing all you guys here. You guys bringing all your experience and showing up, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have tonight.
So we're going to start with just some presentations, some information. We don't have answers, but we have ideas. And from there, we're going to break up into some groups and have an unmeeting and unmeeting. So hopefully it won't be your typical meeting where you'll get to choose what you want to talk about and what you're interested in and facilitate those conversations. All right, so let's just get started. Again, I'm Meredith. I teach at Catlin Gable, which is an independent school here in Portland. And I teach economics, and I teach history, and I teach geography to 9th and 12th graders. I'm also the co-founder of Startup Camp, which is an experiential 3-day learning experience about entrepreneurship. And we model ourselves after Startup Weekend, but it's only for high school students. And prior to that, I taught in public schools in Durham, North Carolina, and the Chicago area. All right. So this is Beyond Grades, Walls, and Online Learning. And I think the future of education is better than just adding whiteboards. And that's just what I've seen from my experience. It's like, let's add whiteboards on all the walls. Let's add whiteboards on tables. Let's just add whiteboards. And I think that the future of education is going to be education so that kids can feed their souls and feed their families, where kids are given choice and creativity and authentic projects. And I think the future of education is going to look vastly different than a classroom with whiteboards. I love this quote from Peter Thiel. It really resonates with me because I don't know about you, but I had those weekly readers growing up in school, and they talked about things like wrapper that covered cheese and other food items that tasted like that food item that would just like disintegrate in your mouth, and there would be no need for plastic bags anymore, which was really exciting for a budding environmentalist. And they talked about things like flying cars and Mars colonies when I was in school. But we don't talk about that anymore as much. We talk about tomorrow and the crisis in the headlines today. And I think that every day we just try to get through the day. And I think that we can do better than that. And I think that we should and we can dream. And I think that our kids in our future deserve us to be dreamers, or they want us to be dreamers. And so, I love Twitter, I love social media, but I think we can do better than just like rearranging the way that we can communicate, or just rearranging or building new cars. I think we can think in other dimensions. And so these are just my ideas about thinking in other dimensions. And I think we need to think in other dimensions because our economy and the way our economy is going and the way our education system operates are going in completely different directions. All right, so we see in these statistics some kind of dismal things going on with our economy. Not all dismal, but some of them are not great. One of the kind of liberating and freeing things is that we have this increase of freelancers in the workforce. In fact, 40% of our workforce may be freelance by 2020. And that means kids are going to have to know how to manage their own projects. They're going to have to be self-motivated. They're going to have to sell themselves and be driven and have a skill set that others want and can hire. And employers or companies are going to be hiring students that have a skill set that's in demand, not just to write an essay, but a real skill set. And unfortunately, the system that we have, the educational system that we have, is moving towards more standardization and accountability in a time when individuality and just uniqueness is really celebrated. That's how freelancers get hired. And so we have these two tracks going in divergent directions. And so this is why we're here today, because I think we all believe that we can do better. And I'm so excited to ideate with you, because like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I have just some ideas, and I'm sure that you all have ideas of what we can do. And I'm pretty sure that we put our minds together, and we imagine, and we dream, and we're not cynical, and we try really hard, we can do something different here in Portland, and maybe something even bigger statewide or nationally. All right, so one of the kind of buzzwords in education these days is problem-based learning or project-based learning. And I kind of want us to think about larger ideas than that, systems-based learning. And systems-based learning would have many projects embedded in that system, but it would be multidisciplinary in nature because we tackle things like climate change, which not only deals with science, but it deals with math. The Do the Numbers campaign out from 350.org is very mathy. It deals with social studies and history and economic justice and economics and globalization. So when we think about systems rather than problems or projects, it's kind of like feeding kids like vegetables, like zucchini that are ground up in brownies. It's like kids don't know that they're doing everything all at once, and it's really authentically integrated from all the disciplines that we have walled off from each other. And so that's my call for, let's like break down these walls, let's break down these barriers. And in systems-based learning, like you never find the total truth or justice or end result. I mean, you're always working on improving a system. These systems are never done, just like you might be done with your 10th grade history course and you're done with learning. That's like, I think that's a real injustice for kids to think that they can go sequentially through the grades and then just be done with the grade or be done with school. To kind of inculcate in students that learning is lifelong and that the most fulfilling life is constantly trying to seek truth and justice, I think is really powerful. And in a systems-based learning, we would do theory and we would do practice, just like context and skills. Because we're in this information age, right, where we have just an abundance of information at our fingertips. We have these brains that we hold and we carry and we hold close to us. And we'll never be as smart as them, these iPhones and these computers. And there's just so much information that kids don't know what to do with it, and they don't know how to make sense of it. And so I think it's our job as educators, as parents, as mentors, to give them the why, the context, but then to also help them develop real skills that's not just the information that they can quickly access. And so I just want to talk about this context and connections, because I think we learn through systems. Just because of the nature of systems learning, you make connections. Teachers will make connections, because teachers won't be delivers of content. They'll be trying to connect kids to opportunities for authentic experiences at Mercy Corps, local organizations that work to combat poverty. Or teachers might be working to provide more of the why for kids, showcasing them kind of other cultures, other places. But they're not just going to be delivering information. And so I think that context and connection piece is going to be where the future of educators do. They provide those two things. They also provide skills, and skills that enhance whatever that system is that you're learning about. So skills that I think we've all been taught to be really good essay writers or academics. I think if you did well in school, you could very easily go to get a PhD and do well. But I don't think our world necessarily needs more essay writers. We need analytical thinkers. We need people with more broad skill sets that go beyond these kind of narrow confines of education. So one is like negotiating skills, and this has been popularized recently by Sheryl Sandberg. But also just skills for how to do things, like build things, make things, design things, care for baby animals. Like these are skills that actually can help you in your life to live a happy life. And I think that's an end goal as well. And every year when I teach 9th graders, like I said, and this year for the first time when I passed them an index card and I asked them, can you share a happy memory about your summer? I had kids writing down information about their internships, about working at OHSU, or working at a nonprofit in Seattle this past summer, and they're 9th graders, they're 14 years old, and they're already writing about their internships being the happiest memory from the summer. And I think that's really telling. I mean, I think it's a symptom of the pressure that kids face, right, to get into college. But I think it's also telling because kids really want experience. They want to do something real. They want to make a difference. And I think we owe it to them to give them those experiences. And I think we also owe it to them to kind of engage with people of all ages. Whenever I go to the grocery store, I pass by this karate place, and there's all these people working on their usually yellow belts. I think that's a medium belt. It's pretty common. And there's people that are in their 40s, and there's 8-year-olds like doing karate together, which actually involves like physically like kicking at each other. And so I think that if we can have all ages kicking at each other, I'm pretty sure that we can have all grades of high schoolers working together, and I'm pretty sure that we can also have kids teaching each other and in the same room and being leaders and teachers and learners in a multi-age setting. So Abraham Lincoln is one of my favorites. I think he's probably the best lawyer in American history. And he never went to law school. He was an apprentice. And so I think we know that internships work because of Abraham Lincoln. But we also know that apprenticeships work because they've existed for hundreds of years. The guild system, it still works well in Germany and in Europe. So a lot of other countries use apprenticeships still. We have moved away from that model because of the labeling that happened with vocational tracking and technical education in the American school system. I think we need to think really hard, and hopefully we can do this tonight, about apprenticeships and how we can bring back apprenticeships to teach kids skills. And realize, too, that apprenticeships are a burden for the employer or the mentor. It's a great gift to be the mentor, right? But it's also a burden. We have labor laws, which are all great, but it's something where we can't have kids in this current system just doing work for a mentor. And so we have to think about how these mentors will be compensated by the government, or be provided extra support by a school. And I have lots of ideas. I know that Australia is really kind of progressive and forward-thinking in terms of apprenticeships. They have a high-needs skills list on a website, so they're constantly updating that apprenticeships high-needs skills list every single month. And they provide tax incentives, actual money to mentors. But we can also think about how can we embed teachers in companies over summers and pay them so that they can be trained to provide skills and be real-time mentors during the school year while kids are apprenticing, and then they have that mentor connection that knows the culture of that company and knows some skills to teach as well. But we can talk more about that. Part of this educational reform is permeability. I don't think that startup offices should have total control or ownership over like full ping pong tables and foosball tables and like beanbag chairs and stuff. Like, I think those kinds of cool workplaces and work environments deserve to happen in schools too. And it's not just that like startup employees get cool places to work and learn and be productive. It's that they should be kids and adults should be learning side by side and working side by side. I think there's a lot of value in modeling and engaging with difficult tasks together. I also think that we can use our settings, our physical spaces. So whether it's urban, like we're gifted in Portland to have great bookstores and design week and cool learning experiences all over the city all the time. And why isn't someone building an app that has locations that kind of light up and hang out whenever there's a learning experience for kids to come and participate and hear what's going on or engage with what's going on? Because there's so much, I've only heard real-time learning in the sense of like kids on Skype who are doing online courses, like learning at the same time. That's not, to me, I think like real-time learning is like, let's just have them engaged in the city and in what's happening here and learning that happens in the professional world as well. And I have like crafted a standing desk. I think sitting is really bad, and I think studies have shown that sitting is as lethal as smoking in terms of taking years off your life. And yet we have kids sitting all day in desks for hours a day, and it breaks my heart, and I don't want to stand because it hurts. But I try to ask them to stand, but the thing is, like standing and walking and moving are really important for learning, and yet we have this system that we can change that makes kids sit all day. And I think also about this like college tour experience, and these parents are going to make like one of the largest financial investments of their life, and they're doing it based on learning from a walking tour. So if they can do it, I think our kids can do it as well. Renee's going to talk about this as well, but third spaces, this library space, these are free, and there's so many third spaces. I know coffee shops get bothered when you stay there too long, but there's so many third spaces that we can take advantage of for classrooms. The classroom just doesn't have to be in a school. It can be a pop-up classroom in a vacant storefront. It can be a classroom in a cart, in a learning pod that's outside in a parking lot of a company that we want kids to engage with a project with, so that those employees can come down for lunch and meet the kids at the pod and check in with the project, and then go back up to their space, and our kids can keep learning. So there's so many options for what school-like classrooms need. And we also see this at Washington High School, which is New Seasons is going to move in as their headquarters is going to be at Washington High School. But or Macon Middle School. The school's been vacant for a little while, and we see it being converted to commercial office space now. We know there's a commercial office space crunch, and we know just because of demographic changes also that there's going to be fewer need for classrooms, or a smaller need for classrooms in the future. And so there is a real kind of possibility to share here, and for offices to be side by side with schoolrooms, maybe not just classrooms, to be next to nonprofits, to be next to organizations. And I think that we can utilize some creative thinking around that. And I want to say this, because maybe because this just makes me feel better about being a teacher, but I think teachers are always going to matter. Because I don't think education, and this is my problem with online education is I don't think online education fulfills kind of this real human need to connect and to feel loved and cared for. And so I think this is baseline to learning, and it's baseline to motivation as well. If I can motivate my kids, if I can show them that I care about them as people, not just as someone sitting in my classroom for an hour a day, then I got them. And I think teachers are still going to matter even though we're never going to be as smart as our phones. Like, I'm okay with that. It's vulnerable. I'm okay with it, though. And so I'm going to provide context and connections and skills-based learning. And I'm not going to know everything, but that's okay. I'm going to connect with experts that know a lot more, that can teach a lot better. And the thing is, the pace of change is so great that like no teacher actually went to school to learn how to 3D print things like a castle in their backyard. Like some brilliant person did this, and that's so cool. And I would love to know how to do it. But I have to be vulnerable and learn it with my students because we all want to learn how to make 3D printed castles. And I think also teachers, we don't have to know everything. We just have to know how to make a setting and a place and an ambiance work, right? So I have to be able to be like, I think my equivalent or my analogy is that I am like the dinner party host. So I think teachers set up this context for learning that either works or doesn't work. This culture of a place where kids feel safe, that they can contribute, that they're curious, and they're motivated. If you do that, then it kind of all magic happens, right, in this space, and that's what teachers do. And I'm almost done, but I just want to say that grades are scary. And they're scary not just for students, but for teachers as well. And I think they make kids risk averse. I know they make kids risk averse. Kids don't want to take a class they're bad at because they don't want to get beat. And I think they get consumed by that product, and they're not so worried about the process and progress that they're making. And they're scary because they know it's kind of a gatekeeper for college, which is ultra competitive. And so it's kind of this black hole where they're sucked into, and I guess I would say that what they're getting sucked into is like this college admissions process. But I also want to think big picture here as well. And I don't have children, but I imagine one day if I do have kids, I won't be able to afford college at the rate that inflation is going for college education. And the return on investment of college isn't as great as it used to be. We saw those stats on millennials being unemployed or underemployed. And so we have to think beyond a system that's totally not functional. And this system of scariness, of grades, of hyperinflation grades, to get into a higher education system that might collapse is kind of wrong, and it's not helpful for the kids. And I think grades are just like fluff. They're not substantive. There are lots of other ways to evaluate and assess kids that are really helpful for them as they develop into themselves and their identity. Maybe we can use reflections. We can work on goals and meeting goals, and we can work on habits of mind. I found these really sweet assessments on the American Association of Colleges and Universities website, and it's a rubric for lifelong learning, and it just spoke to me. It was really great. And so these are some of the characteristics that kids are graded on in the rubric, which I think that was really authentic to the real world. This is how someone might get a freelance gig, is that they were showing independence and initiative and transferring of skill sets. So I highly encourage you to check out that AACD rubric and start using it. And also asking for community assessment. I feel like we try our best to be objective as teachers, but we're subjective human beings. And so why don't we get parents and outsiders and the public involved in assessing? And that's how people get freelance gigs as well. There's this really smart man named Austin Clune, and he writes a number of books and a blog. One of his books that I really like is called Show Your Work. And I want my kids to own their domain names. I want them to show what's meaningful, not what's not so meaningful in their life. And I want them to show what their skill set is. Because kids are going to have to learn how to brand themselves and identify themselves digitally in order to get jobs in the future. And so when I think about education as well, I also think about just the three questions I come back to all the time. It's kind of like this soul-based education. Like, who am I? Who are we? What is good? And I know tomorrow night, William Dershowitz is giving a talk at Reed College, and he wrote this book, Excellent Sheep, which says that, we produce like the same 5 types of high-achieving college graduates. Like they're consultants, or they're investment bankers, or they're lawyers, or they work at Teach for America and then make more money. And so I think we can do better than just producing excellent sheep that are anxiety-stricken. I think that we can do better by helping kids develop who they really are. And I think they can do better because we deserve it for the future. So Einstein came up with his theory of relativity, and it totally upended Newton's laws of physics, right? But that was the only way to solve these essential problems of physics, was this theory of relativity that totally upended things. And then we have Moore's law, which talks about rapid change, and that the pace of processing doubles every 2 years. And then we see neuroscientists doing this research that shows that our brains are plastic, and they're more plastic than we ever imagined them to be. That our attention spans have rapidly decreased over the past, 10 years since the internet's been around. Our brains are changing rapidly, and yet we have the same education system. And so I would just encourage us all to take this time to think about, kind of like Einstein thought, space and time, and how we might be able to modify our understandings of space and time in the context of learning to create a really novel and better functioning educational system so that one day we could have flying cars. And that's my part of the